Two NHL teams named new captains this week. What is the role of an NHL captain, and do teams need one? We'll talk about that, plus all the latest NHL news from around the league and more, all on today's show.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Locked On NHL for Friday, September 15th. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm here each and every Friday with Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started. Happy Friday, Gil.
Happy Friday, Rachel. How's everything?
Good. I was looking at ye old NHL.com website this morning, and the ribbon with the upcoming games is there. It's got the preseason games, not till next week. We'll talk about them next Friday, but still, that's a good feeling.
It is. And, you can feel how close the season is. There's a little coolness in the air, and some teams, rookie camps are opening, training camps are getting underway this week. It's an exciting time for the world of hockey.
It is. And two NHL teams will be starting their training camps with new captains as of now that we know about. The first of which is the Winnipeg Jets, who named Adam Lowry their new captain. And the Jets have been in a weird situation with this because, as we know, Blake Wheeler was the captain beforehand, but despite playing for the team this past season, he was stripped of that C. And it was a pretty awkward situation. And, Blake Wheeler is now a New York Ranger. So that seems to have settled itself out on that front. But I do think that, with the Jets, they're in just such a no man's land right now. And so I think naming a new captain is a good thing for this team to kind of set the team in a new direction.
Yeah, they sort of needed to declare a captain and take a direction. And this is sort of a transitional time in Winnipeg. I think Lowry's a good choice, being the veteran that he is, to take over and wear the C.
Yeah, and I feel like there's some sort of like kismet to all this because, as we know, the Thrashers relocated to Winnipeg in 2011. That's when Lowry was drafted, and so he's kind of been there since the beginning of the Winnipeg Jets era of this iteration, and so it just kind of feels right for this team.
He does seem like the right guy for Winnipeg 2.0. He really does.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other team that has picked a new captain is the Vancouver Canucks, and Quinn Hughes was named captain. There are, some teams that name younger captains, and Hughes is 23 years old. It can be controversial to do that because sometimes you expect like an older veteran to be the leader in the locker room, but sometimes it's just a young star that kind of sets the tone for whatever direction the team is going in. I think the Canucks are obviously in a different position than Winnipeg, but there is like this desire to kind of move on from the mediocrity of the past several years. And Quinn Hughes is one of the bright spots. So why not give him the seat?
Yeah, on a team that's situated the way Vancouver is, they're trying to get younger. They're trying to rebuild. Having one of those young leaders be the captain makes a certain amount of sense. It sort of personifies the direction that the team is going to go in. And as you alluded to, you just have to hope that there aren't some veterans out there who are rubbed the wrong way by such a young player getting the C. But you sort of get the feeling the direction that the Canucks are going in, most players will probably be okay with this.
Yeah, and I think several of them actually showed up at the announcement to support Quinn Hughes, which is really good. I thought like one of the more interesting quotes to come out of that announcement from Quinn Hughes, he said, "I think we have guys that are really hungry and tired of losing, including myself, and take it personally at this point. I've been talking to other guys, and that's how they feel." And I think that, that's a really good attitude for a captain, coming in, especially again, so young, but really trying to set the tone for the future of this team.
Yeah, and that's leadership. I mean, the ability to communicate with your teammates and get a feel for the room, and then even mention that to the media. That's a good sign for Hughes that he's got the pulse of the team down and he is going to speak for the team in certain areas.
Yeah, and I think, the situation with Bo Horvat, and obviously where he wound up. When you trade your captain like that, it can kind of create waves in an organization, and that's been happening a lot recently. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the next segment. But I do think that the next captain to take over when your previous captain was traded, I think has a little bit of an extra burden, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think if your captain is a true leader, trading your captain is a big deal. And it often signifies a change of philosophy, a change of direction for the team. And, the person who takes over next bears an even bigger responsibility when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the role of an NHL captain is so amorphous, right? And, again, some teams don't have one. We're going to talk about that. But, I think in some instances, having that captain is so important because it really just sets the tone for what the identity of that team is, like who is selected, and um, what kind of captain they are, because I feel like there's two kinds of captains in the NHL. There's the really vocal ones that talk a lot and really kind of act as a shield with the media, and you can tell that they are the spokesperson for the players of the team. And then there's the quiet, methodical ones that you never really hear from, but they just do their work out on the ice, right?
Yeah, there's the lead by example and there's the rah-rah guy, and
Hmm.
it's both types, both styles can work. I think the most important thing is for whoever is the captain to be true to themselves and not try to be who they aren't. And then obviously to have that sort of innate leadership quality, the respect of everybody in the room. I mean, if you look back over NHL history, there are so many great captains who have done it in different ways. I mean, the Flyers, you can go back to Bobby Clark and what he did on the
Hmm.
two Stanley Cup championship teams. Mark Messier in Edmonton and in New York, sort of the consummate pick the team up and lead them forcefully. And then you have other captains, as you alluded to, who are just kind of quiet, but we don't always know what goes on in the locker room and how they lead, even if it's not rah rah and blatantly obvious to people outside the locker room.
Yeah, I think it's just fascinating because in the NHL, the captain does have a role, but ultimately, does it matter? Not really. And so, just in terms of communication with the refs, like you can assign other people to do that. Like there's things that can help your team when you do have a captain, but you don't absolutely need one. And so I think that when you have a captain that can make an impact as a leader, I think that only helps your team in the end.
I agree. And look, let's face it, there are some teams that, they'll have three alternate captains and no captain. Somebody, believe me, is leading that team in the locker room. They may not wear formally the C, but
Hmm.
they are still the leader of that team. And whether they get designated the C or not, they're going to fill that role.
All right. Well, we do have 8 teams in the NHL without captains as of this recording. And we're going to talk about, living without a captain and what's going on with those teams coming up next.
All right, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season is back, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. And hey, look, you could pick your favorite team if you want to go that route, or any one of the 32 teams that you think has the best chance to win the Super Bowl to maximize your bet. And you can use these bonus bets on point spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So just go to fanduel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com/lockedon, fanduel.com/lockedon. Check it out.
All right. So looking at our 8 NHL teams without a captain, I think the first one I want to talk about is the Chicago Blackhawks, because I think this is a real interesting situation. So you have Jonathan Toews, who Captain Serious, one of those quiet ones, but who did kind of talk to the media, and especially in the last few years when the team has not been very good, I think he's kind of dealt with the brunt of that in terms of interfacing with the national media about that and what it's like to go from a really successful Stanley Cup winning team to then just having to slog through the past couple of years. He is now a UFA and, has been continuing to deal with health issues. Not sure if he's ever coming back to the game. So obviously, the Blackhawks are now without a captain. We do have a young superstar joining the team, but he is very young, and it is very rare for an 18, 19-year-old to get named captain to an NHL team. It does happen. We've seen it even recently. And obviously, like Connor McDavid is an example of a very, very young captain when you have a phenom like that. Do we think Bedard will get that C? And is it going to take maybe a year under his belt before they give it to him? Be just, in deference to Jonathan Toews and say, you've made such an impact here. We can't just immediately turn it over.
Yeah, I think they should wait 1 year at least. I mean, if you think about it, they waited 1 year on him. Sidney Crosby, they waited 2 years before giving him the C. I think everybody knows that Connor Bedard will eventually wear the C, assuming he comes even close to what expectations are and stays healthy. But I mean, don't you have to shave first before you get to wear the C most of the time? I mean,
Listen, I don't I don't know that matters very
I'm just
much.
kidding. But yeah, I mean, I would think an 18 or 19-year-old rookie, you want to prove yourself a little bit before handing over the C to a young player. And I think they should wait 1 year. Let Connor Bedard learn the ropes of the NHL, adjust to the NHL. Adding the responsibility of being a captain in your first season, it may not be doing Connor Bedard any favors. So, you've got guys like Seth Jones and Connor Murphy on the roster who have a little more experience, who are signed for, a few years down the line. Possibly giving them the C for 1 year might make sense. Or you could just say, hey, in deference to our past captain, we're not going to name a captain. We'll go with 3 alternate captains this year, and you can make Bedard one of those 3 alternate captains. So I would wait a year, but I think it's inevitable that Bedard eventually does wear the C in Chicago.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that's how it should go as well. I think the waiting a year is the right move. The next few teams, there's this weird linkage here, but let's start with the Mark Giordano situation, right? Where he was taken in the expansion draft to Seattle from Calgary. Calgary still does not have a captain since then, and has operated without one, and has been uneven, I guess, is the generous way to talk about how the Flames have been, and kind of, um, they not having a captain. I think it has been a part of the lack of consistency there. I think to some degree, but then Gio was traded from the Kraken to the Leafs. And so the Kraken were left without a captain. So the same guy, captain of two different teams, leaving those teams. That's a bit of a outlier situation here.
It is, and it's kind of a strange set of circumstances, but I think Calgary should name a captain. I'm not sure, who some of the best candidates would be. Backlund comes to mind to me, but he's not really under a long-term contract at this point. He's only got 1 year left on his deal. Maybe he serves for 1 year and then, not sure if he comes back with the team. And Seattle, they've got a few choices out there. Not sure which route they're going to go. I mean, it's too soon, I think, for Matty Beniers to take over. What do you think?
Yeah, and I feel like that's sort of the logical choice, but I don't know that he is ready, to your point. I mean, maybe Jaden Schwartz,
Yeah.
I think, was one of the A's. I mean, Jordan Eberle obviously has leadership there, but just has the 1 year left on his contract. So to me, like Jaden Schwartz is the name that's sticking out on that team. It has 3 years left in a contract. Maybe Adam Larson. But I think those are your two options there for Seattle. But the Leafs were also busy collecting other captains, and they did so from the Blues. Ryan O'Reilly was traded to the Leafs, and so the Blues still don't have a captain.
Yeah, that's also up in the air, and I guess there's sort of two guys who sort of stand out. I mean, you've got Robert Thomas as one possibility. Maybe Braden Shen, but I don't know if he would be right at this point in his career. And then possibly Jordan Kyrou, but I think Thomas would be a better choice than Kyrou at this point.
Yeah, I do think there's some potential there for Braden Shen. He is signed with the team long term. He's been there for a while. He was there for the Cup. I think like if you're going to pick a veteran, and aging myself, I can't believe Braden Shen is a veteran, but he is 32, and so I think that there is something to it there. Colton Parayko maybe as well is a good option. I always like a defenseman captain. I appreciate when that happens. So
okay.
I'm always rooting for the defenseman to be named captain, but I mean, goalie captains are like unicorns, but I think that, for skaters, like I root for the defenseman there. But yeah, so the Blues have been without a captain for a little while now. And then, the Bruins are one of the newest teams to be without a captain, with Patrice Bergeron retiring.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I wonder whether or not they go without a captain this year. They have some real veteran leaders on this team. You could go Brad Marchand, but is his role starting to diminish at this stage in his career, or do you go the Pasta alternative?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's where it's going, but again, like you just never know with the Bruins. And again, are they going to want to have some breathing room? And would Brad Marchand want to take the C like right after Bergeron? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that there's also the dark horse Charlie McAvoy, I think, in this situation, who signed long term and is really, I think, one of the stars of this team now. And so I think that's a really good option as well. But we'll see what the Bruins decide to do, if they name one for this season or they decide to wait. Of course, my Flyers still do not have a captain after Claude Giroux got traded to Florida, not last season, but the season before. And coach John Tortorella decided vehemently that he was not going to have a captain on the team last year. So Scott Lawton had the lone A for the team. And Tortorella has said that he does not anticipate naming a captain this season either. And when you're in year one of a rebuild, I think that makes sense. Like, let's see what, and who floats to the top here and makes themselves known. And, it could be Sean Couturier, but it could be one of the younger stars that are coming up with the team. And I think it's pretty valid to not have a captain on this team right now.
It makes a certain amount of sense on one level. On another level, though, for a rebuilding team, do you want to have that one guy who's sort of leading the charge, especially on a young team like the Flyers? I understand the logic of not wanting a captain. I might be interested in, naming Scott Lawton or Sean Couturier to that spot, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that just simply because Sean Couturier didn't play last year, this is almost like his first season with John Tortorella, right?
Yeah.
Of them
Oh, yeah.
working together. And so they've got to get to know each other, more directly than they have in the past year and with Sean Couturier on the ice. So I think that'll be a huge part of it. Two more teams, the Ducks and the Yotes, are captainless. Of course, with the Yotes, Oliver Ekman-Larsson got traded to Vancouver, and with the Ducks, Ryan Getzlaf retired, and they have been floating in the wind since then.
Yeah, I mean, probably a little too soon to name Trevor Zegras as the captain, although I think inevitably, assuming
Possible.
he signs a long-term deal in Anaheim, that he will be the captain eventually. Maybe you go Troy Terry over there if they name a captain.
Yeah, I think that's possible as well. But, we'll see with all these teams what they decide to do. And like we said, I think it's valid to have a captain or not have a captain. It's definitely a choice that is made. And when you don't have one, the coach kind of is that mouthpiece for the team and the advocate for the team. We have much more to get to on the show. We're going to talk about a little bit more news, especially around Carey Price. Plus, we're going to do a roundup of all the rookie tournaments this weekend coming up next. All right, so one of the rumblings around the NHL this week is Carey Price talked a little bit more candidly about the potential of him never playing again. It's something that I think a lot of us have just sort of assumed, but I think with competitors like this, especially Carey Price, who's battled so hard to try and get back in the net, I think it's just going to take a while for him to acknowledge that.
Yeah, and look, it's not the way you want to see anybody have their career ended, forced to step away from the game because of an injury like this. And obviously, Price has had other issues off the ice as well. But this is not the way you want to see a great goaltender end his career. But it's looking more and more likely that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I think so too. But hopefully we get him back in net. I think the NHL would be better to have him retire from a playing position rather than just having to retire due to these long-term injuries. But just a legend overall, and I think he'll be celebrated appropriately as such if and when he decides to officially hang it up.
No question. And his place in Canadiens history and NHL history is secure in that respect.
Absolutely. And then, the other bit of news that took over the NHL for a while this week is the Babcock investigation in Columbus. Of course, it was the controversial situation with him asking Boone Jenner and potentially other players to show family photos or show photos from his phone. All the players have talked about it being a nothing burger, that it was just an innocent wanting to get to know the players, and looking at photos can help in that. But the Blue Jackets are doing an official investigation nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think they sort of have to because of the PR situation. I get the feeling that one way or the other, this is going to be, the investigation will find that it is, as you said, a nothing burger. Whether that's actually true or not is a different story. But, hopefully this doesn't prevent Babcock from having a good relationship with his players going forward.
Yeah, I think it was a controversial hire to begin with for Columbus, and so starting off kind of on this foot is not great. Regardless of the intentions. They always say impact is more important than the intention, and this could be a very good lesson learned in that kind of scenario.
No question.
This weekend, looking ahead, we talked a little bit about these rookie tournaments last week, but they are officially dropping the puck on rookie tournaments this weekend and starting today. So keep an eye out for where your team is playing this weekend. Of course, we've got the one hosted by the Vegas Golden Knights out west that has the Ducks, the Yotes, the Avs, the Kings, and the Sharks as well. We have the Buffalo Prospects Challenge. The Habs are there with the Sabres, Bruins, and Senators. The longstanding Traverse City, Michigan tournament, which is one of my favorites. We've got the Blue Jackets, the Red Wings, the Stars, and the Leafs up there. And then we've got this Southeast Showcase in Fort Myers, Florida, that's hosted by the Panthers, along with the Lightning, Carolina, and Nashville. Then the Flyers and Rangers have a rookie series, so they play a back-to-back this weekend, starting tonight, and another game tomorrow. So some actual NHL sort of games, I guess we'll call them.
Yeah, no, and it's always great to see the rookies, and it gives them a chance to make that first impression on the coaching staff and on their teammates. And, some of these kids, they may not make the team out of training camp, but as soon as injuries hit or players start to slump, you play well in these rookie tournaments and in training camp, you get to be one of the first players called up when that happens. It does matter, even if it may not, the results may not shine through immediately after these rookie camps.
Yeah, I think, it's a real interesting situation for some of these players because some of them are just trying to like get some NHL experience, and it's pretty much known that they're going to go back to junior teams, right? But some of them are trying to make NHL squads and not go back to junior. We know we have that like 10-game cushion as well, but for them to earn a place in the main training camp coming out of rookie camp, just to even have that shot of getting some NHL preseason games under your belt, I think it is super important.
It's very important. It really can make a big difference in how quickly players make that adjustment from juniors to professional, from the, ECHL to the AHL to the NHL. There are a lot of factors involved, and, making that first impression can be a very big deal for these young players.
Yeah, absolutely. So keep an eye out for all those tournaments this weekend. And we'll be talking about some actual preseason hockey next week when we return. And then on the Monday show, of course, Gil, you'll be back talking to hosts from around the NHL network to talk about what's going on with their teams.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And it's great to have hockey back.
Absolutely. All right. That'll do it for today's show. Have a great weekend, everybody.